probably work like this for the most of the times. I think people are fine. They go to university, they have jobs, they learn quite well in the traditional sense. OO needs to support radical alternatives. Cool. 3 things in my speech. First, why teachers on our side of the house have the capacity to do this well. Second, why 14 to 18-year-olds make poor choices, or they should make the choices later. And thirdly, why progressive education doesn't work well. Cool. So on teachers and their capacity to teach well. Note that probably incentives exist on our side of the house to share materials and tactics and to share what works with their students. This happens because probably there are teacher assessments, right? There are school assessments, things like, okay, how many of your students have passed the final exams, what's the rate of success and whatnot. But also, no thank you, probably there is pressure from parents, because if the kids come back and they're really unsatisfied with the teacher, probably they will like go to the principal and complain about this, right? So incentives to perform well exist. Note, fourthly, that even if you have textbooks and you teach from textbooks, you can still teach in a fun way. Why is that? Because you want the kids to be receptive, you want your grades to go well, but also secondly, because probably you're passionate about your field, right? Note that most teachers work in public schools, only a few of them work in private schools, right? This means that probably the public sector cannot afford to pay you as well as a job in a private sector, right? Meaning that there has to be some other reason why you choose to be a teacher, because you like teaching. Think of you panel teaching debaters and giving them feedback when you get like a bad IA funding, right? You do this because you care about what you're teaching and you care about learning, you like spending time with kids, right? So they have all of the incentives to go good. Of course, there will be some instances in which you have bad teachers, but those are probably symmetric. We think on our side of the house, you have more incentives to do this. Note, secondly, on the kids themselves and why they're likely to make better choices on our side of the house. Note that when you're 14, you don't really know how life goes, panel, right? You're not sure like what choices you have. On their side of the house, you have to choose a thematic theme, right? So if you want to learn about space, right? But if you later decide to like, I don't know, learn about, political science, that's going to be a lot worse on their side of the house. Why? Because you have spent like some years getting educated in one field and then you have to switch, right? Why do they do this? A, because they are kids, their neofrontal cortex is not developed enough just simply by biology. But second, also because they might be lazy, they might have distractions around them, they might have like, I don't know, there's this girl in class that I really like and I want to like go in her class and whatnot because I have a crush on her, but also because they want to, I don't know, spend time outside, they can be lazy and whatnot. But thirdly, they're also influenceable by other people, specifically by parents. And I think this is worse on their side of the house. Why, or in what ways are they influenceable by parents? I think A, there are certain norms in societies about certain professions that are more successful than others because they are paid more. So for example, you're told, oh, be a doctor, be a lawyer, do this so you can end up in school. This might lead a kid to choose a subject at 14 that they don't really like, right? That's bad. On the comparative, on our side of the house, what happens is that if you really like, you study other subjects, right? You study maths, chemistry, physics, but you also study literature. And if you decide at 18 you have more autonomy to actually go against that parent pressure. This is crucial, panel, because the kid who actually wants to go to art school is more likely to go to art school on their side of the house and be more happy in the long term, even if they don't receive like a lawyer's salary, right? But also, secondly, there's also a lot of pressure from parents to like, be self-sufficient, right? To leave the house, to like earn your salary, to not depend on them anymore financially because they will grow old or whatnot, and in some countries even to support them financially later on, right? This is bad because probably this will lead them to like make decisions influenced by their parents on their side of the house. On our side of the house, sure, maybe they will have maths and chemistry too, but they can still take that literature course, and even if they don't ultimately pursue that literature study, at least their time in high school is better off because they get 1 hour to talk about Shakespeare, whereas on their side of the house, there's no such time, meaning that their educational experience overall is bigger in quality. Cool. Then, why are progressive education worse? First, because of the choice you make in the student psychology, as I said. Secondly, I think the lack of supervision. I think the quality of your education gets worse the moment that the teacher only facilitates, right? So you do peer learning. If you're somebody does a PowerPoint, right, that with things they Googled about Iraq, versus somebody who does who does a teacher who does a presentation about Iraq that has actually studied that, obviously you're better off because they have more deeper knowledge. Closing? You can engage.
So if I don't want to do
and lastly, I think you have more quality education because the teacher now has the ability to give you lectures and to study, to have studied that subject in detail versus your peers who probably are not well educated in that topic. Okay, Wayne, why is this the most important thing in the debate? First, it's about how you learn, right? So if you get more information and if you get more clear information the earlier in your life, it's good because you're at the age where you can orient yourself, right? So it's easier to make choices once you have more information, right? That's the time where you have the ability to explore all of these options on our side of the house. Secondly, note that this is a secure impact. Why? Because it's about other things in life later on, like uni admissions. Probably, if you don't study maths, it's very difficult to take a uni exam in maths if you did experimental learning for 4 years in something like literature, for instance, right? So you have more capacity to go to uni. This impacts you passing your exam, but also access to a career later on, social mobility, and the things that I explained are important to you.
When I'm speaking about my speech, they reminded students of the importance of accepting and offering theories. And with that, I would like to welcome the leader of opposition. Here. Do you want to pull over a second?
That's fine. Clarification at the top of my speech. The choice is not going to be absolute for the kids. Still, there's going to be topics that are going to be decided by, be it the school curriculum, be it the general school assembly or whatever. And this is true for a couple of reasons. One, you still need to cover basic topics in order for students to understand a more holistic approach. And this probably means that they're still going to learn some form of math. They're just not going to learn it in a specific type of one course math, etc. The second reason why this is so is because uni exams still exist on our side of the house, likely, because people still need to have some form of connection. Therefore, probably people still want to cater to that to some degree, and also parents want their kids to be generally educated. That being said, I'll have a bit of engagement They say that they have teachers that are unable to do these things. 3 reasons why this isn't true. First is the point about being more expensive and things like that. I'm not exactly sure this is true because every single thing is quite expensive. The textbooks that you have are always going to be adapting and things like that. They're also true when you have traditional learning. But also, on the point about how teachers are capable and things like that, I think that they are capable, but also the specific topics that they decide on a symmetric level, they're still able to learn about them and be more engaged also in our side of the house. I'll have that more in the future. And lastly, if you have a radical change, as Elizabeth said, likely there's going to be pedagogical faculties that also account for that and teach the teachers how to teach in this specific way. So the ability for teachers to actually do this is likely the same. On the point about kids, I don't think that kids have absolute choice in the topics that they have because of the exact analysis they had previously. But also, let's say they do. The comparison is the school curriculum. I still, as a kid, choose not to listen to the school curriculum if I don't find it interesting. And the exact same analysis coming from OG about how I'm unable to decide what is interesting to me applies. The difference here is that the system on our side of the house supports my choice and enables me to actually listen to it in a more engaging way. They talk about how parents are able to choose and pressure kids in a specific way. One, this is probably symmetric to some degree, but also I prefer parents do that over the traditional school curriculum that is centralized and things like that, because the parents probably know more nuance about what the kid specifically wants comparatively to be a one-size-fits-all. So even if the parents themselves have a big choice of what happens in a specific school, I think it's better. Cool. That being said, our case. Firstly, of why this is a better way of learning, and secondly, why kids are more engaged and interested in topics. Why is this a better way of learning? The problem that we currently have is that we have a lot of lack of connections between different topics, and on our side of the house, this happens. This is going to be also building a world and painting a picture of how this likely happens. I understand what ions are from chemistry, but I don't connect them to the synaptic connections in the way that our brain works, because I don't see that from the perspective of chemistry. I see that in biology 3 years later. I learn about geography, but I don't connect it as to why it's important that I know why specifically Syria is there and how connected it is to specific areas. On our side of the house, this isn't true, because if you cover specific topics in a holistic sense, you are able to connect them, and you're also able to understand it in a better sense. Why is this important? This is important because this is generally going to facilitate a better ability for individuals to understand different topics. As in, topics are not nuanced and are not nuanced in the status quo, and on a comparison, topics should be a more holistically approachable thing. Because that's just how it is. Chemistry interacts with biology, interacts with physics, and things like that. Why is it not likely that on a comparison people are next to the house, they're not going to be doing it in a holistic way? One is the info slide, but two is the resources and the way that the education system is targeted towards the general education. As in, the faculties teach teachers to do it in a very specific way. There's a math teacher, there's a chemistry teacher, there's a biology teacher, and they don't have to interact with each other. They don't need to do these specific things. This also directly engages with the potential cases that come from classism and things like that. Insofar as you only have resources for a specific math teacher, you're only going to get that specific teacher. But if you have just general holistic teachers about sciences, general holistic teachers about social sciences and things like that, you're able to have multiple teachers that have a more holistic way on a comparison. But also, the time is quite important, right? Because if I'm a student and I have a lot of time that I already have to do my homework, I need to do so many things outside of things, and also this specifically targets poorer kids, right? If I have that amount of time that I already need to put into school, I see no necessity for me myself to be educated in a more holistic way outside of school, right? This is exclusive and also present on our side of the house. I don't find the energy, I don't find the time. The impact of this is quite simple. The people just get a better education because they have a better understanding of the holistic understanding of the holistic world that we are currently living in. Things do interact with each other, and you're able to remember them better. And this is the second thing, right? Because it's not only the fact that things just are more holistic. The question is also the ability to remember things in the future. Insofar as I forget things because the only pressure for me is to just pass that specific test, I'm probably not going to remember it in the long term. But if I connect them to different topics, if I connect them to how these things interact with each other, I'm much more likely to actually understand it. I'll take closing if you have anything.
So we give you mechanisms why teachers are likely going to do this well, and it's not going to be boring for students. Can you please engage with those?
Yes, sure. One, some teachers are good, some teachers are bad, quoting OG. But also, I think insofar as the students themselves are better at learning and learn things more, the teachers themselves that are passionate are going to recognize this to be more passionate as well. They're going to see this as more fun to them. Second argument about interesting things. School is quite demanding, and this is the characterization, right? I need to put a lot of time into it. I need to do a lot of these specific things. But very important, when you're later on, you're likely going to be very critical of school because of the fact that it's demanding. You have the ability to just go out with your friends, but you're forced to stay in school and things like that. And when your teacher is explaining to you the binomial theorem and never explains to you why it's actually useful in physics and things like that, why it doesn't connect to specific things and doesn't connect to your general education, it probably means that the average individual is not going to be interested in the exact topics. The comparison is that on our side of the house, you are given the ability to connect into different things and are able to also understand it. The comparison on our side of the house is very simple. One, you feel more in control because you do the research. You think about specific things that actually happen. But two, you see why things are important. You see why things should be focused on. And this is also true for teachers, right? Because if you're passionate, if you buy the analysis coming from OG, why individual teachers are willing to spend so much time to teach the next generation, they're likely going to feel disillusioned seeing kids day after day being disinterested in the very topics that they teach, the very topics that they feel passionate about. But this means that on our side of the house, if they're able to be more maneuverable and more catering towards specific kids, it probably means that not only are they going to have the tools to be more engaging, but also going to be engaged on a very passionate way by themselves. This means that they themselves are going to turn into better teachers on our side of the house and therefore offer a better education. Lastly, insofar as you feel a responsibility towards your own education because you have the control, you're probably going to develop specific soft skills that otherwise you would not, as in research. And this is very good because even if you research things in a very non-nuanced way, you still learn how to do the research itself. And even if you're critical and learn the wrong things, you're still able to be, alone.
I'd like to thank the speaker for that nice speech. And I'm welcome to the deputy prime minister.
guys just raise hands, don't say stuff. I want you to think of the first time you had to explain to your teammate in a debate about an IR case you didn't know about some random country you first heard about and how the economy over there is going or how the people over there are going. And you're going to quickly see that that's probably how people are going to go in these classes and try to explain to their peers how things are going about subjects they don't know about in a way that they don't necessarily care about, because it might be within their area of specialization, but they don't care about each case study, especially if it's as per assigned to them by the teacher rather than they be able to choose some things, right? Particularly they be able to choose, in physics I want to focus on how a spaceship works, or I want to focus on how the rainbow works. If their teacher says you only have these two choices and you're not that passionate about either of them, then you choose one and you have to figure out how it works and you have to explain it. That's kind of how this works, right? The problem is a couple of things with this. So I'm going to give you 4 clear reasons as to why the way one I explained to you is better for these kids to learn. Then I'm going to weigh it off and then I'm going to clarify whenever that fits. Cool. 1, I think because it's less confusing, it's better. I think the idea of compartmentalizing things by topic rather than having a holistic approach is better for you to be able to understand particular things about that topic, right? So when I say this thing, like me being in this room works like this because my body physically works like this, and then there's the emotional side and my psychology and how it affects me, and then there's the part about finances and how I was able to get here and everything. That's a lot of information, especially for a kid to process, right? And they say holistic is good because then they learn to have engaging stuff and so on. But what they don't engage with is that then they need to be able to understand general rules that take from all of these things and apply them to different cases as well. When they learn the human body works like this, and they say this is the biology part because this is the component in the body from there, and then this is the chemistry reaction that happens in your brain because that's the part, and then this is the physics of it because your brain is, I don't know, heavy or something, right? All of these things, they need to be able to then compartmentalize that they have general rules. I think this is difficult for a kid to do, even if it may be desirable that they do it, right? Because they need to have example A, example B, example C, and they go on with all the letters of the alphabet until they understand that that's not just an isolated case, but that's an area of expertise, that is a general rule that applies. And yes, the teacher might say it is, but note, there's less time for the teachers to be able to themselves be able to explain these things, to be able to themselves be able to make the kids understand how these rules work and that they apply in multiple cases. So I think over time, they might get their impact, but it's about how short-term and closer, when you first explain these things, the kids are able to get it. Why is this important? 1, because of how they are able to understand the things and be interested in them. If I don't understand something from the get-go, especially kids with a shorter attention span, and there's one I characterize that might have different interests as well, they are likely to disengage with that topic and not want to learn further on, right? It has compounding impacts in the longer term if you don't understand from the get-go. 2, because you might be able to disengage with the topic as a whole. So you might say, I don't like maths because of the way that maths was explained to me in this particular example of the spaceship, because it was a too complicated equation for me to get. And instead of being open to the idea of learning general, simpler rules of maths, you are close to the idea just because that particular topic didn't interest you. I think this is more likely in kids because, again, as one I characterized, they are maybe impulsive, they don't compartmentalize things as well because they don't have abstract thinking, etc. Not on the comparative, you're likely to still be able to engage with simple, basic things first, right? When you start a general thing, you don't have to engage with the level of complexity of the weird example of the rainbows if the law of physics in there is too complicated. You can start with the basic. Here's how gravity works. It's m times g. It's one simple, small equation, and that might be easier for kids to process. Second thing, I think depth and clarity is important, and this is all of WUDC's mechanization on why teachers do this well. They say, oh, but there's good teachers, bad teachers. That's a strawman response. WUDC's case points to you, it's about how much the teachers are able to explain and how less reliance you have on the students explaining these things when they don't have the same capacity comparatively to be able to explain it well, or they don't have the same passion comparatively to explain it to their peers. That creates a lot of trickle-down impacts that what I was talking about. 1, it's about how your exams are going to go, right? Because if you understand things somewhat comparatively less, you might have a worse of grade. And margins matter in university choices. Margins matter a lot, particularly in high school choices and how you rank students against each other, right? The idea is it's so standardized. We should be able to see globally how the average is and figure out if you are better off in a university in this country or you are just below the threshold and you won't get there. If you don't have the good margins, you're not there. Two, I think it's about the stress levels of the kids. The one that talks to you about social norms is not just symmetric, but it's about how the kids are able to then deal with that, right? It's not just about the influence of choices themselves, but it's about the kids knowing, I feel certain enough that the way I'm handling the subject is good, that I understand what's going on, and that I will pass my exam. So it's a continuous impact throughout their school journey, but it's also a continuous impact in the long term. When they are facing the exam, do they feel like they have just isolated examples, or do they actually understand the equation because that is what will be asked of them? And they say, sure, they will teach it on their side as well. The comparative is how much time do you spend on teaching the standardized things that will be asked of you in the exam, and how certain are you that the way it was explained to you was clear because it was a teacher and not your colleague who didn't give a shit about it when they explained it to you, and so you are confused about whether or not it works this way or that way, and they had a muddy explanation. Closing, opening.
Okay. Yes, sure. We can just start with the basic stuff. As in, you obviously don't give children theory of relativity to learn about. You start with basic math concepts. You apply them to complex topics.
Okay, cool. But maybe you don't. That's not comparative. Fourth thing why you should care about this more, I think standardized education makes it relatable, and I think this is important. Instead of having isolated cases of physics that you talk about with a student from another school that has a different teacher, or with your parent as well who went through the same education system, I think it's easier for you to be able to help each other with homework, or to just understand that you're going through the same thing. Like the tests are somewhat similar because you use similar textbooks that go through the same things, right? These things are comparatively more relatable, and that brings enjoyment and maybe capacity to build more friendships, and also just have better connected learning outside of school as well, which tends to happen plenty when you have to in high school because there's pressure from your parents to be able to do well and to go to university. Why is all that we've told you most important in the debate? I think, one, because it's prior to any happiness in your life later on. This ties to your career choices and you feeling like you are sure of yourself. This ties to the margins of you getting into university. This ties into the margins of you being able to win stuff later. OG.
I figured that by speech, and I will tell you that you need to have a position. You're there. Yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Cool. Assuming the panel is ready. So, Irina brilliantly explains to you exactly the way that this is going to work. You first explain to the student the biology component, then you explain the chemistry component, then you explain the physics component, and you do it in an interconnected subject that does not need to differentiate between the different things, but explains the application of these different subjects and these sub-subjects that you're talking about to the central issue of how Irina was able to stand here and deliver a good, although fairly dismissive to opening opposition speech. I do not understand why this is something that teachers are incapable of doing for the very reasons that opening government wants to give to you. Let's deal with the quality of education. Number one, the passion argument from Anna applies anyways. That's to say, teachers are probably anyways passionate and therefore able to explain these sort of things. They say, but you have less time to do it because you're reliant on students making Iraq presentations. Like guys, this is just empirically untrue. A, there's extraneous societal reasons to not have children teaching other children about the way geopolitics works. Even if you make a child do a presentation, you presumably correct the errors that the child makes. You presumably intervene and tell the things that are done wrong, and it's unclear to me why there's substantially less time than asking your children a question about what the quadratic formula is, getting a wrong answer, and then giving a response to that. B, I think children aren't stupid. I think they have the capacity to understand stuff, especially in later classes, especially when you're around 16, 17, 18, you have the capacity to understand these sort of things, and your presentation on Iraq won't say that it's in America. It's probably going to give generally correct facts that other people are able to learn. 3, if it is true that you're primarily learning from your peers, then I would argue it is easier for you to comprehend these sort of things. Like if the argument they make is, you start with 2 basic and 2 stupid things because it's other stupid children that are teaching you, it's also probably true that it's easier to comprehend these sort of things because there are more basic levels of grasping, because it is your child peer that is explaining to you in language that they're used to, in colloquial language that you're going to use with them in interactions. They're going to flip their point on difficulty. I think as far as interactions between children go, and also the 20-second impact extension from reading that on, but you make more friends because you interact better, because your textbook is the same. Yeah, you're in the same class, you learn the same things. I would argue more so, you learn them from your peers. You learn them from these kind of interactions that you make. I'm going to impact this on the amount of interest, but just on the amount of quality. I think it's either symmetric or likely to be better. Number 3, they say, this knowledge is incredibly difficult and incomprehensible. Cool. Number 1, school is a long-term process. I think when you have 4 years of high school in the vast majority of countries, it's unclear to me why first-year students at 14 are going to learn about the theory of relativity. I think you'd start with very basic concepts. Maya already tells you this. There's extraneous incentives, and there's a need to start with basic understandings of the subject in order to go into things that are applicable and more advanced. I think this happens on either side of the house, where teachers have the capacity and the incentive to do these sort of things. The question is whether these things are tangibly tied to something. What then is the debate about? I think number 1, it is on the quality of education that you're going to be getting from these sort of things. Why is this better on our house? Number 1, the ability to have holistic overview. Why is this crucially important and what will impact the stuff that Mai says? I think number 1, it's just the reason that you want to know stuff is the capacity to apply stuff. Knowing stuff for the sake of knowing stuff is not particularly important for a couple of reasons. 1, it's difficult to apply to exams that you're going to have in the future. Because the vast majority of university exams do not ask you what the quadratic formula is, but ask you specific applications of these sort of things and the specific skills that you do it. The reasons for this are, extraneous societal reasons where on your job you don't write down formulas, but you solve tasks and you do these kind of things. But it's also because a lot of university exams would otherwise just be very easy to stupidly memorize. There's incentives to make you learn and go into the higher levels of learning, and this is something that you want to develop at a young age. This is prerequisite to be able to do the sort of future stuff in connections. B, I think education is only important insofar as education tangibly contributes something to society, right? There's no point in knowing a bunch of stuff if the stuff isn't something you're capable of applying. And I think that students cannot make these connections on your own. Why gives you a multitude of reasons, very little response, as to why there is no time, as to why there's no incentive to do these sort of connections outside of the way that your teachers teach. And if you don't do these sort of things, even if you do get more knowledge in the open government, like I probably do know a greater amount of things in terms of the dumb memorization that I have the capacity to do, these things are harmful to myself because I'm incapable of applying them either in terms of my job, uni exams, etc., or being to the pragmatic contribution to society. I'll take closing. You guys didn't take us.
If you're not a generalist and you're constantly trying to learn things by experimenting them, but then I change careers because I don't know what I want to do when I'm 15, how do you achieve people?
Okay, this is opening government. Let's deal with this. Let's talk about pressure and let's talk about the capacity to choose engaging directly with these sort of things. Number 1, my parents forced me to do a specific discipline. I don't want to do this anymore. How do the two sides compare? I think priorities, either through stupid choice or parent pressure, exist either way, right? Like, presumably, I still have a priority on medicine or a priority on other things that my parents push on me, or I made a stupid choice because there's a hot girl in my class, or something along the lines of this. What is the comparative here? Number 1, I have the agency of interpreting these sort of things. So if I'm anyways pushed into doing more chemistry classes, more advanced math classes, if I'm naturally more artistic, I'm going to interpret these things in an artistic way. I'm going to look for the things that are nice, look for the things that are creative in the stuff that I'm learning. In terms of chemistry or biology, I can go into stuff like biological art, or the way that biology, chemistry, and physics interact with the artistic world and other things. These are cross-connected in actual life. There's a lot of scientists that also do talk about stuff like the importance of art and the way that it reflects itself into science, and I'm able to change the angle from which I explore these sort of things. So if I'm pushed into this anyways, I have far more individual agency. But B, and more importantly, because the subjects are generalized and because the subjects transcend a greater amount of stuff, if I'm pushed into a class that talks about, for example, environmentalism or the way the human body works, there's a greater amount of aspects, right? I'm able to learn about the biological, physical, and chemical composition of this instead of only learning about it as a doctor or a mathematician. So I have, in the single subject that I'm doing, that I'm probably pressured into, the agency to do these sort of things anyways, and I think this is far more important. Thirdly, let's talk about interest. They say, students aren't interested, are going to make choices based on stupid stuff, and are going to do stupid things. Number 1, I think this is symmetric, as I explained previously, and the applicability of this matters more. But they say, teachers are going to make this fun, and therefore you're going to be interested in it anyways. Teachers cannot make this fun for a couple of reasons. Number 1, because the fun doesn't come from the teacher explaining to you in a fun way if you do not fundamentally care about the thing that they're explaining. Why does this change in our side of the house? A couple of more reasons than you heard previously. Number 1, you gain agency over the stuff you do. I am able to control the interpretation of my curriculum. I am able to control the way in which I'm going to interact with this. This 1 means that I'm likely to do it in a way that is just more applicable to my future life and my personal interest, if anything, subconsciously, if not consciously, because I'm just inclined to do these sort of things. But B, and more important, I'm just more interested in it because I feel like I have agency. Most children at teenage ages want agency. I want control over my life. I don't want to be dictated to the stuff that I want to do. So I'm inherently more interested in this too. applicability. I see the applicability of my things. No fucking teacher can make the binomial theorem interesting because it's just not, because I don't see where this helps me in my real life in absence of the application that we give to you on our set house. Thirdly, it's just a lot more work because it's a lot more spread out in terms of the amount of shit that's here. The reason you rate this is because it's the prerequisite for other stuff. In a prerequisite, you need to be able to be interested in these sort of things, to want to apply them further. But more importantly, because when I do apply them, it's a better and more important application, because this is why we care about education. Proud to be a
I'd like to thank the speaker for that fine speech. And I want to remember for the meet. Here, here.
I'll take my POIs the same as BPM, just open your hands and I'll see you. Actually, it quite distracts me a bit, so I appreciate it. I think conveniently, opposition just tries to ignore that this is a motion of preferred worlds. We're talking about secondary education systems that are going to change, but their side still remains with the status quo of universities. My opening government quite clearly tells you how they're going to impact better the students and how it's likely for the system to make them better just because of being a generalist. If they're going to tell me that it's going to be interesting for them, they're going to take the lack of, if you have a world in which they have agency, they have to accept that it's going to take a long time. If their case is well understanding of the topics, it's going to be in the matter of taking more time to explain it, having more resources in which you're trying to get them to understand it, and furthermore, we have a lack of opportunities to generalize on the topics that are likely going to be tested in the future. Secondly, I'm going to be really clear on my structure here for my extension. I think inherently in this debate, there's a clear principle. We're talking about education. It's a mandatory thing the system must ensure for every one of their citizens. We believe government doesn't actively tackle on why this is important and how a system that actually changes this for experimental system, firstly, clearly ignores the inequality that exists around the world for educational systems, but secondly, how do we believe they have to ensure basic needs for all their necessities. I'll take a POI for closing whenever you want to take it for engagement. Let's start with the learning structure first. I think education veils the potential of every kid that passes through its doors. We have an obligation with its users to not rock the inequality path. Firstly, what's the learning structure like and what do we think is important? We think firstly there's a progressive overload of content. I'm giving you every single thing along the way that you're able to get the tools to do whatever you want with this content and this knowledge. And specifically, this looks like I'm giving you algebra in first grade of secondary school, and then I'm giving you calculus at last, because I know you need the building steps to do it. What happens on the other side is this progressive overload of content, A, looks extremely different because we're focusing on them learning, not memorizing. And we believe when we don't tackle why memorizing inherently, even though we think it may be bad, it's what gets you a job, it's what gets you in university. Every type of impact that we can claim on government or opposition about the kid comes from where they get after secondary school. If I ensure that's better, I think we win on that comparative. But then secondly, I think except for specialized schools, you're a generalist. So basically these characterizations, I'm going to give the kid everything that they don't want to give, like geography, history, even though you know that you want to go into pure maths. So why does progressive fault in structure? 3 main points. I think firstly, there's a sidelining of the teacher. This is an extension to the mechanism my OG says. We believe sidelining a teacher is not like taking them out of the classroom. We believe inherently from the motion, when you're giving them a facilitator role, they lack the academic empowerment they get when they're the ones giving knowledge to the kids, to the students. When there's a professor that teaches me something I don't know, in my brain I recognize them as someone powerful or someone that I can get as a role. And specifically this, it makes less easy or accessible the way that this structure works to get more learning in the person. But then secondly, I think there's more diversified in the curriculum. Inherently, when we give students the possibility or agency to change the status quo of what they're learning, there's more variety in which classes they can take. This is exactly what I mean by not allowing them to get all the basic needs of, for example, the basic requirements for university. Give me a go.
So if there's more variety, there's also just a greater chance that they're going to cover the stuff that they're going to get tested on in university directly.
It is pretty squirrel from opposition to try and claim that they're going to have all the experience on the field and also all the knowledge from my side. If that's the case, there's no agency in opposition. We have to understand that there's a possibility of them actually learning something the way they wanted to. They're lacking certain spaces, like my OG says quite clearly, in which they're going to give these other classes. If we are specific in the way that we give classes to the kids, we lack the agency to teach them the other things they don't need or are quite not only obligatory as they try to mitigate, but also important if they want to change careers. But then thirdly, I think the interconnected of topics that directly relates to this. I think the lack of agency for the kid is extremely bad. So the lack of agency is quite important to have. Firstly, for the specialized education. Secondly, because I will understand the topic as memorize anything that's important. I think I already explained it. Let's go with the idea of a principle. We think education is a mandatory obligation. We think here in society, we value that the government pays self-education for their citizens because it's the only mechanism in which they can scale, not only economically, but socially. I think fairly, one, there has to be available to everyone, that's why we have public and free education. But then secondly, it has to meet the basic needs of every one of its citizens that passes through it. This is a mechanism that unless someone only goes to obligatory education, every single one of us has gone to school. We need a system that works and not impairs people by the opportunities they have. There's a clear piece of characterizations that none of the opening cameras have touched. As specifically, what do we believe education is unequal, and how does your side make it more unequal? So, we think firstly, we're not going to tell you that education in my side is available completely at the same level for everyone, but we're living in the worst case scenario when we have public education and it's just a base curriculum the government allows or gives the professors to follow. It's meeting the basic needs of something I may need in the future, like math, like science, and being a generalist like social sciences and geography and history. If I decide to change careers, if I decide to not be the thing I wanted when I was 15, like for example, I'm an engineer, I wanted to be a medic, this system allows me and gives me the tool to do so. In their side, when I'm being a specialist, I'm going to have to learn better, I'm going to be way better understanding certain mathematical concepts, but I'm going to be lacking the agency to switch from that. When we don't allow people to actually move and decipher themselves in an academic setting, but more so in the future, we're failing them as a government. We think it's way better on our side of the house. Firstly, because we don't have the problem of accessibility. We think even in the worst case scenario where resources are lacking and we don't have the opportunity to give every single student a great textbook, we're allowing them still the opportunities to a teacher that has experience, a curriculum that has worked for 35 plus years, and specifically, and the clear-cut case that makes government win against opposition for now, is that we allow them to fit into university, because that's not the system that they're likely going to change. In both sides, university still sucks, and I still get an exam that decides my future. Closing, I'll take you if you have anything. I'll take it. Come on.
So the way that universities work in the status quo, as we explained it to you, is oftentimes testing your ability to apply the prior knowledge that you get. It's better if you already know how to apply knowledge, if you know the way the university is going to work, rather than it's a shock when you enter university and you know how to do it.
Let's put this into comparative. This is not a concession, it's an exercise of thought. Let's assume that exercise of them being more capable of understanding deep scientific textbooks or knowledge because they spend more time doing so. I still believe my side is better when I'm allowing more quantity of people to have more abilities to have just the base needs met and not having them to go to a different opportunity or a different system or having to learn by myself all the things that I need in the system. Just because of quantity of people help and just because of my side, the education needs and obligatory, mandatory, let's say, things that the government has to do are being met, really proud to propose.
And I thank the speaker for that fine speech. And I welcome the member of opposition if you're here. If you want to pull over to the table, have more space.
Oh, yes.
Firstly, dealing with OJ's case is about why this is not transferable, why people cannot change their major when they're really young. Their main argument or main reason, the first thing, they're too young, they're too naive, they don't know what they like. But we believe our side of the house is not that we give you tons of knowledge that probably you can apply for work or something. We give you the instability for thinking, for creativity, for working or sociability, for working with cooperation, whether things have progress or not. Those things can also be transferable when they're growing up, probably when they're transferring to the other major. And also notice, we believe the way they work on their side of house, the system of education, will also work in our side of house. For example, we also give you critical thinking. We also give you time for internship. We also give you visits for chances for going to the workshop or factories, for seeing how those things are actually working, or how to those like different kinds of job are doing. So we believe the things that your side of house talking about is almost natural, or not that really important. But however, we believe the really important capability or ability gained in our side of house is how the student dealing with their self, how they have incentive for learning, how they try to equip with better knowledge of thinking or deeper exploration for researching, or etc. So in their side of house, the only student they only know how to be doing tests, how I do on my math, how I have a better score on standardized testing. However, in their side of house, students have no chance of choosing what they really like. I think majority of students now in their side of the world is like, I have to fake things down, like I have to do it on British or probably get an A or B, but however, I don't know why I should get A, or why I don't really like this kind of subject, why I really have to do math. Because the government forced them to go into the textbook that the government designed for them. There is no personal choices to them in their world, and we believe the personal choices or individualization in our set also really matters. Okay. Firstly, dealing with the gap that our set of house is missing, the burden, why our set of house students or teachers also have the capability of equipping good quality of education. Firstly, we believe there are few reasons why the goal of education is likely to be. The first, we want to equip the skills in society. Like we want corporations because you have to have a good relationship with your students or your coworker in the future, or exactly how you have the ethically good student in the future. So what the textbook gives you is that firstly it gives you simple knowledge without those pictures or long sentences. Somebody just really really bored or feel really sleepy when you're going to the classroom in etc. We believe this is so boring and so traditional. What the world looks like is now. There are tons of interesting a platform, for example, TikTok or YouTube for equipping you with so much information that you probably will likely to learn in the future. So that it means that the ways for education in schools are too old and without reform. 3 reasons why it's really hard to reform as a traditional way in their sectors. Firstly, it takes super long time. For example, as a teacher, you have to get the government censorship, you have to get tons of government decision for what kind of knowledge you're talking about, what kind of topic or things that is better for future education or future generations' capability. But however, those things are never being reformed in their side house in really super faster time. However, why is it efficient in our side house? Because as our side house, we have better teacher for knowing we're also immersed in the super informatics world that we know how we can get access of information. But however, in their side house, teachers are too being stressed out by the standardized testing, or they're being informed by the government that you should teach the things on the textbook, so they are free to do so. However, in our side house, the teachers know that they have to do progressive learning. They know I have some authority for teaching my students some way that they really like. So we believe the teachers have more rights in choosing the way that individualization students want in our side house. Second of all, we believe, the things why teachers are also good is they also will experience a time of certification and internship to become a teacher. They also got the teachers certificates or whatever. So it means that they have the basic sense for choosing what kind of knowledge is really good or capability with a student in the future, or what kind of things that I should really do for helping them out in the future. So second of all, we believe they also have the basic observation for basic in the education industry. Thirdly, we believe they are also stressed that they don't want to fake things up. Noted, this is the worst case scenario in their samples. Because we believe there are also a majority of the super big problems. There are a lot of teachers that are just faking things because they have the textbook, they have the test, they have so many papers for teaching you how to do things well. However, they're just ignoring what the student really like enough. They don't know what the children really love or what's their biggest question about this thing. But however, in our set house, there is progressive teaching, so the teacher has to answer their question. They have to answer what kind of thing they're thinking about. So we believe they have more engagement, they have better progressive in our set house. Because they have stress to not making things up. Thirdly, also, the teachers' incentive, they want to make the students love them. So they also want to make the things down. So they want to try to perform good, to make them understand what they're talking about. We also have the accessibility to engage with the student in our set house. Lastly, why the government have incentive to cater and invest in our set house? Because we believe, even though their set house, a lot of majority don't really engage with this scenario. But however, in our set house, we believe because of this progressive learning, some majority also will have the votes in Spring Core. The government will also like to cater to those group of people, provide better educational resources in order to cater to their votes in the actually so many more. Yes.
Your mix prove that teachers have capacity to use materials well. This is symmetric. On our side, teachers have more time to spend with their students, so this is on our side of the house.
I think this time or energy spent on both sides is actually symmetric. Or the passions about the teachers or whatever is actually symmetric. But the problem is incentive of teachers to try to know more about what the students are thinking. Your side house is too long or traditional way that teachers just thinking they're too there are so many experiences for whatever. However, only in our side of the house, students will make their step out to contact the teachers or try to know more about their progress or try to know about their program. That is the thing that we believe is a key point in the students' interest. So lots of argument about why we believe there will be more students' interest in this kind of way. Firstly, we believe we will have more specialized, more incentive for the students. They will become more happier, have more incentive to learn. First reason is that because our work prioritization is that we have more programs to cover with our classmates. We know we want to build a bridge together instead of just looking on the bridge in your textbook, right? So we have to go for more real places, from visiting more museums to research about how we can build a better program, how appears on the world, how appears on the result, our outcome. So it means that we try to think more ourselves in our more ability when we're working together, and also the parents are also more likely to give their more buy-in because they see their children are more happy with the outcomes. They're more confident in seeing their results. However, in your side house, we only have scores without meaning. Okay, Charles, 2 minutes.
Like to speak of that final speech and then welcome the competition. Here.
This is going to be the world's shortest whip speech, but I'm happy to be here.
I've seen a 3-second one before, so
I know it's just brought in extension, but I really want to be clear about how swiftly opposition has completely ignored my characterization. Even though it's kind of dirty, I still believe it's not new material, and I do believe they have to engage in this. Education is inherently not accessible for everyone. This is a statement that I did. I have opportunities for them to give me a POI, and they're able to do so now. And I'm going to explain how this is the angular stone in which my case lands, and even the worst case scenario where my principle is dependent on the practical and you buy on my OG's extension, I think I'll in a second. Let's explain firstly the accessibility principle and how do we believe that inherently when we have this all amazing experimental learning, you're not allowing everyone to get the same. I think firstly, there's a clear understanding that when people don't have the economic resources, they're dependent on the system. So specifically, lower class families and kids in which they have less opportunities to complement their kids' education as taking them to an amazing travel to the CERN to learn about nuclear fission and how maybe another person in the same society could be able to. Is there an obstacle they're not able to get across that already exists on my side? What happens in the comparative is that on my side, I'm able to give them a basic system that's at least going to give them the basic tools to get out from society. In my worst case scenario, in which families don't have the resources, they're still able to get better. Then, when we ensure the basic needs, is that we're actually allowing the principle to happen. We believe the principle, as I said in my extension, is a mandatory obligation of the system. When we allow it, is that we believe it's inherently good. I'll take it now.
All the resources are also dependent on whether or not I'm able to be interested in them. If I am overworked because I have to do 2 jobs because I'm lower class, this probably means that I'm not going to be able to memorize all these things or be interested in these things. So actually, the house to mechanize how teachers are accessible.
Okay, same exercise of thought. Let's assume that people are better at learning and let's say they're better at understanding complex topics and they have the amazing teachers as well as trying to get that. That first is expensive. Not everyone is accessible to that. That's the main point of my case. Understanding that not everyone has the same opportunities, but then secondly, that in this case scenario, when we allow them to be specific, we're not allowing them to be better on the future. Their case is specifically dependent on how we're going to get better education, completely oversize what the next step is going to be, as well as closing opposition, in which the university, even if reform is available, university is still not going to change. If we're going to allow people to be better and be smart, it's not going to be a system up for everyone. We're going to have people better prepared, getting into all these universities, and not allowing for other people to get these kind of opportunities. We're hindering people on their side of the case. Now let's take a quick look at the comparative and how I may be able to adjudicate this. I I think with closing opposition tries to lay about how a reform may be possible and how inherently we're going to get a better education thanks to this. I believe, firstly, a better education is dependent on how it's going to affect. What's the value of this education? If we explain that this education likely is not going to help the person get a better job or it's get a better development in society, it's inherently not doing anything for us. But in my side, if I'm sitting a kid in his geography class, but at least he's there and he's following a system, it's following something better in their future, even if the teacher sucks. Notice that in my worst case scenario, which my education sucks, I'm still beating the closing opposition idea of getting better education within getting better resources, better teachers, better opportunities. Let's take my opening. I'll take your POI after. I think first with my opening, it's the same principle again. They try to say that things are still changing, things are still obligatory as a mitigation to the opportunities that people may have, and that inherently there's still going to be things that they're going to be doing. I believe that deafness is the specific mechanism that differentiates these two models. In my side, I'm going to be able to sit down with students and give them 2 classes a week for a year about geography. In their side, I'm not going to be able to, or if I do, it's going to be twice or triple the amount of time. The compromise of time and the depthness of the topics is the difference in both educational systems. In my side, I'm able to at least have an understanding in the basic levels, even in my worst case memorizing, but at least the content is there and they're able to recall it if necessary. But on their side, even when they're better, they're not able to do all other things that I still believe are necessary as a government to give their kids in an education system. I'll take your POI closing. Sorry.
Why students love memorizing?
They don't love memorizing. Your call to recharge is to explain to me why even if I'm memorizing, even if it's words, I'm telling you it's going to be better for the future. I don't care if the student gets better development, if that does not directly mean that everyone is getting more opportunities at university. In my side, it still allows, even for a system that is archaic, it's a system that's archaic after secondary school. It's the same for your side. You're not explaining how the reform is also going to affect university. Understanding that with my opening. I think in my opening, it clearly characterized the main things of learning structure. I fill in the voids that I feel are important, specifically like the interconnecting of topics and how inherently does not allow for a better understanding of it. But I believe the principle stands. If the principle is somehow failed by that analysis, I believe that we may explain their case a little bit better. For all the reasons, I'm sorry, proud to propose.
I'd like to thank the speaker for that fine speech and close everyone. I want to know to do it. Here.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Like, old houses actually meets the status quo problem. Now the status quo problem is that the teachers' college is actually decreased in a larger scale, which means that there are lots of only young teachers and they actually don't have no manners and they actually no deep understanding on the textbook. So in their set of houses, the students in their house in the future, they can only rely on the textbook, and this is what the whole op-ed never proved to us why textbook is good enough than lots of other sources in our set of houses. And I will prove to you why the textbook or this kind of thing is actually not good enough in their set of houses, and then we hold their cases because it's actually the premise of their whole cases. So actually think about this, who actually controls the schooling? This is exactly all this kind of state or this kind of thing. So which means that the courses in their set of houses are oftentimes rich and majoritarian, and the funding are often controlled by the state. Maybe there might be some external funding from the parents. So what does it mean that the first is that the people who have the power, the people who are in position, they actually have no incentive to change. Why does because there's actually no benefits for them. If you change, there might be some backlash. The face that if there's no change, then no one actually will blame you of like industrial houses. And third is that I want to point out that like students actually have no agency in any education systems because like but at least in our set of houses, students have an agency to explore by themselves. They actually have to select more information because like even if like it says that like this is also engagement to the like to bench like POI says that like the students cannot change the subjects or these kind of things. So at least like maybe like the worst case is the students still cannot like find a good job, still like still cannot find a good job. But at least the students in our set of houses, they spend like the 6-year time or several years time to explore the things that they really love because this is the time they choose at that moment. It's the things they love at that moment and they spend their time to actually study for it. And this is the most agency that in our houses you can get, but in their houses they're kind of like rich and they have to be coerced to learn something that they don't like or they may don't like. Sorry, no time. And then move on to my and this is this is kind of like the engagement with the OG. OG talks about like the teachers actually have less time to explain all these kind of things, but we believe this is not true. The first thing is that we believe that students, like teachers, actually have more time in our in our type of houses because actually can have a deep interaction with the students because you as a facilitator you have to focus on, you have to monitor their their discussion. So which means that you actually have the time to discuss or to interact with the students, even observe their discussion. And this is actually more time for them instead of like in their type of houses, the teacher only standing on the standing on stage and talking something, reading something on the PPT or on the textbook. And second is that there will be students will be much passionate because they have to be much cautious about information the students can't get from the other from the internet. So which means that they will be more they will be more interesting than compared to industrial how teachers are reading the same content for maybe 10 years. And the third is that there will be more supervision also both from the parents and the school because everyone knows that the students actually can now exposed to lots of information. So which means that this also give the parents and the government also have this kind of have this kind of awareness that they have to take focus on this. They have to have more check and balance on this. And fourth is that there will be peer exploration, their peer discussion. Why this is so important? This also give the ways or this is also important because the rich students can actually bring more resources and which this can share by the peers. And but comparatively there will be last year the person can never reach out to the resources shared by the rich people. And then this is I also want to point out so why this is also our upper house is improved to us. So why this kind of information is so unique. So why this progressive education model is so unique is that because it actually gives students maximization agency to explore information. So in our set of houses you can actually get more information from various various fields. So why this information is so unique and so important? The first is that think about it taking this for example if you choose to learn environmentalism you will choose to learn first of all exploration and then the textbook don't tell you that where you can learn this where that you can study in this university, which one is the best university or which way you should learn them at the best. So only truly exploring the information on the internet you know what you like, you know where you should start, you know the future, you probably know all the things. And this kind of maybe in some textbook there might be some demonizing this kind of environmentalist and there might be no emphasis or some misinformation about this because actually textbook stands for national identity. And compared to the university houses you can see how the Gen Z is trying to afford to become environmentalist, and you can also see lots of minority knowledge, and this is also trigger more discussion. And this is what our upper house didn't prove that this is the unique things that our model has. And moving on to because I think CG is kind of derivative from their upper houses. So I have already flipped their premise about their textbooks are bad. So this is already saved the dialogue because all the houses are kind of tampering with which one is can have a good quality teachers, but we actually solve we actually solve the root problem. Tell you why the people in their houses because the textbooks are actually much bad, so which much worse. So which means that the quality is actually much lower. So we actually save the dialogue. And also what LG talks about there, they can the talk is about they can also teach the textbook from fun way to something, but we believe that this comes symmetric because the opposite would be much better in our houses because you can actually obviously see more discussion, more interpretation, information is much more interesting in our houses. And also so the contribution of CEO is that first we actually give the whole government bench the premise
my speech. Once again, a reminder of the importance of accepting POIs, the importance of engagement. With that, I'd like to next step at 5. Please walk away from the door.